It's 9:30, so I will call this hearing to order. So we'll start the recording. Okay. We want to welcome everybody here to this voter registration challenge hearing. My name is Will Brown. I'm the chairman of the Dillon County Election Commission. We're going to start with introducing the board members. So we'll start with you, Ms. Davis, if you'd introduce yourself.
I'm Mary Davis. Martha Triggers.
Richard Calhoun.
Melissa Thompson.
Amy Cardwell.
Michael Grice.
Dorothy Carmichael.
Lee Herndon.
Okay, thank you, everybody. We'll get started here. The first thing I want to mention is, if you would, silence any electronic devices, including cell phones, things like that. So appreciate it if you do that before we get started. Okay, so today we've got a voter registration challenge here presented by Ms. Sarita Bethea against the residency of Mr. James Campbell. Today's hearing will go accordingly. Ms. Bethea will present evidence for 15 minutes, and then Mr. Campbell will present evidence for 15 minutes. Each side will then have a 5-minute rebuttal, and then we'll have a vote by the commission on this challenge. Yes? No, they've got 15 minutes. Okay. Okay. As the parties come up, in your 15 minutes, I'll hold up my hand when you have 5, and I'll hold up my hand when you have 1 minute. Okay? Is there any board member here who has any reason to recuse themselves from this hearing? Do so now, please. Okay. Okay, so the first party we'll hear from today is Ms. Sarita Bethea, the protestant here. I'd like to, without objection, enter into evidence the documents Ms. Bethea submitted as part of this challenge. I believe you received those documents, Mr. Campbell?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And every member here received those documents? Okay.
Yes.
All right. So we would enter that as Exhibit 1. Okay. All right. Thank you. And now I would turn it over to Ms. Bethea for your 15 minutes.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, ladies and gentlemen of the Commission. Thank you for your time. We're here today to determine that Mr. James Hoghead Campbell does not and did not reside in the Dillon County District 1 as required by the South Carolina Election Commission at the time of the November 8th election. This qualification reads that a candidate must be a resident of the district at the time of the election. Let me repeat that. Must be a resident of the district at the time of the election. You have in your possession Mr. Campbell's signed statement of intention of candidacy that reads, I hereby affirm that I meet or will meet by the time of the general or special election or as otherwise required by law the qualifications of this office. He has not met the residence requirement. Yes, he owns a house in District 1, but prior to and at the time of the November 8th election, he was renting said house to Terry and Chantel McCrae, and he was residing at 1927 Russell Court, where he has been living for several years. Mr. Campbell is going to allege that Mr. and Mrs. McCrae are living in the house temporarily, but Mr. Campbell had other renters in the house prior to the McCraes. He could have exercised his right to return to the home several times in the past years, but he did not.
Interpose an objection. That is not, her last statement is not contained anywhere in the filing she has made. The only statement she said as to residency was against Mr. McCrae, not other things. And she's got to give us notice. And that what I'd ask that not be considered by the commission. The only comment she has made as to residency is Mr. McCrae defeats his residency at that home, not other people.
Okay. All right,
I apologize, Mr. Chair. I am obviously not an attorney. I came here today by myself not thinking I needed an attorney because it seemed pretty clear cut to me that he was not residing in the district at the time. I apologize, sir.
That's fine.
I don't know the law.
Okay.
I apologize for that.
We just need to limit
Yes,
testimony
sir.
today to everything that was
Absolutely.
submitted
That's
in
not
the
a
written
problem.
statement. Thank you.
Okay, but the law doesn't, I think I'm okay to say this, the law doesn't take into effect what might be that he might live there. It only takes into effect that he doesn't, at this moment, reside in District 1, nor did he reside in District 1 on November 8th. When I was in the voter registration office, I noticed the mission statement posted in the voter registration office. And one of the things in that mission statement said it's to ensure that every citizen is able to participate in a fair election. Fair election. And that's all I'm asking for, guys. I'm just asking for fairness. If the law states that a candidate must reside in the district at the time of the election, and that candidate does not reside in the district at the time of the election, I don't think that he should be a candidate for the office. It's clear that you must reside in the district at the time of the election. At the time of the November 8th election, I did reside in the district. I continue to reside in the district. So in my mind, I'm the only qualified candidate for the Dillon County Council District 1. I hired a private investigator because I knew I couldn't go on hearsay. I had lots of people telling me, you do realize Mr. Campbell doesn't live at 403 Lewis Street. Well, I couldn't go on hearsay. I had to have proof that he did not reside at 403 Lewis Street. So for that reason, I hired a private investigator. To me, it was a clear-cut case. If he doesn't live at 403 Lewis Street, then he shouldn't be qualified as a candidate, but I had to have proof of that. So I hired Mr. Compton. He is retired with 31 years in law enforcement with the Florence Police Department. 20 of those years, he was a fraud investigator. He was a hostage negotiator and was on the South Carolina Crisis Negotiators Board. He received a Purple Heart in the line of duty. He also received a gold record from the Recording Industry Association of America, and he was Officer of the Year twice. So at this time, I'd like to present Mr. Tim Compton.
Ms. Bethea, you calling him as a witness?
Yes.
Okay. All right, then you need to swear him in.
Mr. Compton, raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Chairman, Vice Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, I'm a licensed private investigator. I have been for 15 months. Prior to that, she's already told you I was in law enforcement for 31 years. I was hired this past Friday to investigate her claim that Mr. Campbell lived in District 5 on Russell Court, which he claims he lives on 403 Lewis Street. And she asked me to do an investigation, which I told her I would. She signed a contract, which is what the state requires, SLED requires. At that point in time, I told her that I would investigate it, and Friday night, Saturday morning, I went to 1927 Russell Court in District 5, and I placed a tracker on Mr. Campbell's vehicle, which is
I would object to any conversation about a tracker. He has no personal or property interest in that car, and the submission of that information is not proper. We have, under the Constitution of the United States, the right to travel anywhere we wish, but to do it surreptitiously is improper. I object to that testimony. It's whatever he saw, whatever he observed, not what he picked up by a third party or by electronics. Straight up, with all due respect to me.
Okay, I'm sorry, Chairman. The United States law says I, as a private investigator, can't put a track on a person's vehicle as long as I'm a licensed private investigator, and I have a contract, signed contract, making Ms. Bethea a client, and I have a right to do the investigation, just like if it was a domestic case, an infidelity case, or child custody case, or any other type of case.
Yes, sir,
have
but
that right.
I fail to see how any having a tracking device on his vehicle has anything to do with his residency.
Okay, Well, to explain that, if I may, the tracking device I can, which I was going to introduce if possible.
My objection continues.
Yeah, well, again, you got to give me a reason as to why this,
Okay.
why this affects his residency without introducing.
That's what I'm trying to explain, sir.
Okay.
The tracking device will show that Mr. Campbell, every night, goes to 1927 Russell Court and leaves every morning from Russell Court and does his day-to-day business. It will show, I got a
Again,
report,
sir.
I'm sorry.
Again, sir. Yeah,
But
I'm not
it's-
seeing how, again, I don't see how this affects his residency. It just, I mean,
It proves where
Okay,
he's
It
sleeping.
proves where he's living. That's the whole
Yes.
point of the tracker.
You hear me on one matter?
sure.
The direct testimony by this witness is that he was not hired until this past Friday.
Yes, sir.
The certification of Mr. Campbell occurred back this summer in August. To allege that from Friday until this hearing is sufficient time
Okay.
to determine.
This sounds to me like a rebuttal, sir.
I'll do what you tell me.
Is there an objection? Is there?
I object to
You're still
continues
continuing
because
the objection? Okay.
it's inadmissible first.
I understand. Okay, I understand.
And I'll do the one example and I'll quit. He said he could do it by contract.
Again, this is getting,
Okay.
Sir, he's having an argument. I'd like to present my.
yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you. You'll have an opportunity to rebut his.
Well, I'm gonna sit down.
Okay, all right, thank you, sir. Now, again, sir, I'm not seeing the relevancy of a tracking device in a residency case.
Yes, sir. Okay.
So
Well,
without objection, I'm gonna have to say that this is not relevant to the case. Is there any objection from the board?
Well, I would like to hear the testimony. He's only got 15 minutes. I'd like to hear what he's got to say.
Well, besides the
Is there an
track,
objection?
I object.
No, I mean objection from the board.
May I speak again?
Just a second. Are you gonna object?
Yeah.
Is there a second? Okay, all those in favor of receiving the evidence from Mr. Compton?
yes, sir.
Then say aye. All those opposed? Nay. Okay, well, we'll allow it in.
Okay.
Now,
Your Honor,
just,
besides the tracker, I personally went to his residence at night in the morning hours and videotaped his vehicle there, his wife's vehicle. I went to 403 Lewis Street, videotaped both renters at that location. And basically, in a nutshell, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Campbell never went to 403 Lewis Street in the time that I was tracking him and videotaping, never went to 403 Lewis Street. In my professional opinion, and I was a police officer for 31 years and a fraud investigator for 20 of those 31 years.
I'm gonna object to his opinion. That's a decision for y'all to make as a group. Not his opinion, with respect to
Yeah,
him.
exactly.
That's a decision ultimately only the commission can make.
okay, I agree.
Well, in my investigation, he did not live at that house on 403. He lives at 1927 Russell Court. I'm sorry.
Over the 3 days of your investigation.
From Friday to last night. Based on the evidence I gathered, if you allow me to introduce I took stills from the video, so I wouldn't put you through video, a lot of video. I can stills from the videos. I can give those to you as evidence. I got a tracking report. Also, this is the DMV records of Mr. Campbell and his wife. And Mr. Campbell has his truck registered at 403 Lewis Court. His wife is registered at 1927 Russell Court. And the McRae's, at the time they registered their vehicle, it was 1627 Hardy Street in Dillon, both vehicles. So basically, the McRae's are living at 403. Mr. Campbell is living at 1927 Russell Court with his wife. And it's the evidence that I've gathered. I understand you make a decision, but it's the evidence I gathered. If you allow me to,
Well,
whatever the procedure is to give you the evidence.
Ms. Bethea will have to make a request to submit any evidence.
Okay.
Okay, I would like at this time to submit these pictures as evidence and the computer printout of the tracking report. I'd like to
Is-
submit that as evidence.
Is there any objection? Okay, well then, I guess we'll submit that as Exhibit 2.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Bethea, you have approximately 3 minutes left.
How long?
3 minutes?
Okay.
Or would you like to?
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you for listening to this evidence. Again, I apologize for probably not knowing the exact legalese, but in my mind, it was a clear-cut case. The law says that you must be there at the time of the election. You must reside in the district at the time of the election. This evidence, video evidence, still photo evidence, computer-generated printout of where the vehicle was, where he was. The question in my mind is, where was he putting his head on the pillow at night? And this evidence clearly shows, at the time of this election, he was sleeping at Russell Court. He was not sleeping at 403 Lewis Street. And in my mind, that's the evidence that we have here. Where did he sleep at night during this election? He did not reside at 403 Lewis Street. He did reside at 1927 Russell Court, which is not in District 1. Thank you.
Okay, all right. At this time, we will open the floor for questions from the commission. I would remind each member of the commission that it is the responsibility of each party to prove their case. It is not our responsibility. We can ask questions, but please do not pontificate on the evidence as of yet. So are there any questions of Mr. Thay, the protester? Okay. Hearing no questions, I will start the clock for you, Mr. Campbell.
I'll speak for Mr. Campbell, that's right, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for your time. I am always interested in the presentation of a case, what I hear and what I see, because that tells me so much more. I was interested in listening to the private investigator about what he observed since last Friday. But we have so many laws in this state, it takes up 46, 48 volumes. But when you get down to Chapter 7, it talks about elections. And there's some delightful...
You go off the record, please.
Sure. Excuse me, sir.
I'm so sorry. My computer froze.
Oh, okay. Excuse me, we're having some technical difficulties.
I'm so sorry.
All right. Sorry to break up your
No, no, that's fine.
presentation.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that was awful.
Yeah.
Court reporters speak on me all the time, Joe.
No, I'll stop the clock. I'll stop the clock. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't know what happened.
Are we back?
Yeah.
Okay, we're ready? Okay,
Well, wait a minute.
go ahead.
Now we're back.
Okay, all right. Go ahead, sir.
Is that the highest sign out of the court reporter? Good. Mr. Chairman,
Okay.
I always look for guideposts when I think about legal issues and what the state tells me by way of statute must be and what inferences I can draw from them. And I listened to the report of the private investigator, but one of the things I never heard, I heard he knew stuff from Friday until today, but I never heard anything that he thought of, looked at, 7-1-25, which is a statutory determination of what residency is within this state as it pertains to an election. Forgive me, I use demonstrative evidence. It helps me organize my argument. This is the third time Mr. Campbell's residency has been looked at. First was the South Carolina Democratic provided by statute. It says we have examined it, and guess what? We find him to be qualified. Number one, date of that letter is April 3rd, 2016. Lists him specifically in District 1. Second thing and most important in this county was the Dillon County Democratic Party's decision that in fact Mr. Campbell was qualified. And the date of the letter is August 12th, 2016. Now, Ms. Bethea wants to tell you that she had heard, and she had heard, and she had heard, and she had heard, and she had heard that Mr. Campbell was not living at home. But she did not hire anybody she thought helpful to the, or dispositive to the case until last Friday. There are problems with that, and let me tell you why. 7-1-25 talks about domicile. Let me give you an example. I think you'll find a lot of people in Dillon County. How many people have a trailer at Santee? How many people have a condominium at the beach? How many people have a house up at Watery in, I can't call the lake up in the edge of North Carolina that everybody around here goes to. But if you take Ms. if you take Ms. Bethea's proposition as being definitive, we're all shot. I know a bunch of school teachers who have husbands that don't think they ought to go to the beach, that own condominiums, and husbands come down from the time school gets out until school starts back. Does that mean they are a resident of Horry County? Certainly not. Certainly not. For the purposes of determining residency, A person's residence is his domicile. It means a person's fixed home where he has an intention of returning when he is absent. A person that has only one domicile. The thing that just really intrigues the life out of me, I'm trying to find the thing about spouse, and it says,
On section C.
yeah, for voting purposes, a spouse may establish a separate residence. And what Mr. Bethea can tell you is Mr. Campbell didn't get married until last December. He spent 12 years as the deputy sheriff over in Marlboro County for Fred Knight. So in those 12 years he was working for Fred Knight in Marlboro County, was he a Marlboro County resident? Certainly not. And it says what we shall look at. It says, for voting purposes, has he changed it? You can address reported on income tax return. Let's take a look at that just for a second. I have his 2015 in 1040.
Are you gonna submit that as evidence?
Yes, sir. All these I'm gonna put in,
Okay.
but it just helps me get through it and keep
Okay.
it under 15 minutes because you told me I don't get much talk
Okay,
after
I
that.
understand. Okay.
But if you look at his voter's registration, which is most recent, and it's submitted, as we all know, under the penalty of perjury, what does it say? It says 403 Lewis Street. What is the address on the house to the person who owns the mortgage? James Campbell, 403, same place. Other thing that this statute says is that you look at the voter registration card. There's his current voter registration card. There is his current driver's license. The same address he's had for better than 2 decades. And the only reason we are here, the singular reason we are here, is this allegation which is raised in Ms. Bethea's application. My campaign currently visited 403. Now, which is it? Did she know for a long period of time, or did she just find out recently? The conversation you had with the
I'd like to raise an objection to that, please.
She submitted it.
I'd like to raise an objection.
What's your objection?
That prior to that, it was hearsay, and you cannot act on hearsay. I had to have someone tell me definitively that someone else was living in the house other than Mr. Campbell.
What are you objecting to?
I'm objecting to him saying that I didn't know it until
Well,
recently.
that comes up in rebuttal.
Okay.
Unless you have
All
a
right.
specific
Okay.
objection to the evidence he's presenting.
Okay.
You'll need to
All
say
right.
that.
Just very brief. Easy for me to say. I'll do it very briefly. She said, I heard and I heard and I heard and I heard. So last Friday I hired a private investigator. And the private investigator says from blank to blank he was staying with his bride. Well, there's the shock. Mr. Campbell got married late in life. Now, we don't claim that he's not married. We don't claim that his wife lives at a different address. What we claim is, one, to grant the relief that Ms. Bethea seeks, divests the local Democratic Party of its examining authority to determine whether or not somebody meets qualifications, because they can't get on your ballot unless the state and the county says they meet the qualifications, or they will by the time of the election. So we have two prior reviews of Sarita. We have your review of that which was submitted to publish the ballot. And during all of this, there's no objection until last Friday. That weighs heavily on me because I don't understand, if you knew for a long period of time, you did nothing about it. In law, we call it slumbering on your rights or slumbering on your complaint. Mr. Fay talks about hearsay. Terry McCrae, where are you? That's the guy who's staying at my client's house. I'm going to call him as a witness. He will extinguish whatever hearsay has been proffered today. And you can give him such probative value that you find it appropriate.
Are you calling him now?
Yes, sir. Please, sir.
Mr. McCray, if you would.
Can he stand right there?
Yeah, we can do it right there. If you would swear him in, please. Give him the oath.
Raise your hand, please. I'm sorry, what's his name?
Terry McCray.
Okay, I'm sorry. Mr. McCray, do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. McCray, as of this morning, where were you living?
403 Lewis Street.
How long have you been staying there?
Probably 60 plus days, probably now.
All right. Why are you staying there?
I'm in the process of remodeling my home.
Where is your home located?
It's right around the corner for 403. It's 1627 Harley Street. Can I make a comment on that, sir, please? Just one. And it was in that investigative report that's where I stayed, and if they would have investigated that, they would have seen themselves the remodeling work being done. But go ahead, sir.
All right. Are you paying any rent?
No, sir.
What is your intention when your house is remodeled?
I'm doing like Dorothy, so I'm going back home. There's no place like home.
Was it ever your intent to buy the house?
No, sir. No, sir. That's why I'm getting mine redone, so I don't have to buy it.
All right. Who's the owner of the house you live in?
James Campbell.
How long have you known James?
All my life.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions. I don't have any further questions that witness. I'd like to call Mr. Campbell.
Okay. All right. I don't think we need to swear him. Do you have any questions for Mr. McCray before we move on? Okay. Do we swear? Yeah, well, go ahead if you want to. Go ahead. Swear.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Campbell, where you live?
403 Lewis Street,
How long you live there?
probably 20 years.
Is it your desire to change that address?
No, sir.
Have you changed your voter's registration card?
No, sir.
Have you changed your driver's license?
No, sir.
How long have you worked for the Marlboro County Sheriff's Department?
I worked in Marlboro for 8 years.
Okay.
Dillon for 24.
I got you. But I'm talking about Marlboro just for a
8
second.
years.
All right. You didn't claim to be a resident of Marlboro County, did you?
No, sir.
You've heard all this allegation about you trying to sell your house. Any truth to that?
No, sir.
You've heard what I talked about under residency. That's still your residence.
Yes, sir.
Who's the lady everybody's griping about you living with?
My wife,
Okay. When'd y'all get married?
last August 31st.
All right. Nothing further of this witness.
May I ask a question? Prior to the McCrays living there, he was living at 403 Lewis Street.
I was,
From what period of time to what period of time?
ever since I bought the house.
How long have you been living on Russell Court with your wife?
I go out there whenever I get ready.
So your testimony is that you live at Lewis Street by yourself most of the time, but then when you just feel like it, you run out to Russell Court and spend the night with her.
That's what you
Got a
said.
question, Ms. Bethea?
I'm sorry. Prior to Mr. McCray living there, did you have any other renters living in that home?
No, ma'am.
There were no other renters living in that
No,
home?
ma'am.
Okay.
And so I'm asking you have been living at 403 Lewis Court ever since you got married last December?
That's my resident. I live in
Mr. Campbell, my question is,
You're repeating
were
the question.
you living at 403 Lewis Street
I object.
when you got
The determinant
married?
of residency is in the sole province of this community.
Were you
I
living at
agree.
403 Lewis Street when you got married?
Yes, ma'am.
You never went and stayed with your wife?
Yes, ma'am, I have.
May I ask one question
Yes.
and redirect? Has your wife ever stayed at 403 Lewis Street?
Plenty times.
Okay. Since you got married?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, I have one inquiry to make.
Okay.
And I'd like to stop.
You got 3 minutes.
I know, but I want to stop the clock while we're making the inquiry.
Okay.
When the private investigator spoke and sat down, you never afforded me the opportunity to
I
talk to him.
apologize for that.
May I?
We'll do that after the rebuttal.
Done.
Are you finished with your?
I'm going to sit down because you told me I didn't have but 3 minutes and there's not much more damage I can do.
Okay, all right, thank you. Are there any questions of Mr. Campbell or Mr. Campbell's at this time? No questions? Sorry, Mr. Watson?
Yes, sir. Thank
Mr.
you.
Watson, would you like to cross-examine him
Very briefly.
before the rebuttals or after?
I'd like to do it before. I'll burn up my 3 minutes doing that if I may.
Okay, all right.
How about that?
Without objection from the commission? That was a mistake on my part, I apologize. Without objection. Okay, go ahead.
I'm curious, when you went to investigate my client, did you look at the requirements of section 7-125 that talks about domiciles in South Carolina?
Yeah, yes, sir.
All right. Have you ever looked at his voter registration card?
No, I haven't.
Have you ever looked at his income tax
I'm
returns?
sorry.
Have you ever looked at his income tax returns?
No, sir.
Have you ever checked his mailing address?
No, sir, not on paper, no.
Have you ever checked his driver's licenses available on the internet?
No. No, sir.
Have you ever gone to the clerk's office and checked the mortgage which is on file in the house that he claims he lives in?
No, sir.
So you have not checked the first thing when it came to domicile as provided under state law?
No, sir.
And you don't know the first thing about this case until last Friday?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Any redirect you want to ask?
Is this rebuttal time yet?
No, not yet.
Okay. The reason that Mr.
Well, would you like to start your rebuttal now?
No.
Do you have a question for?
Mr. Compton, at the time that I hired you, did I say to you that this came about pretty quickly because it was just right before I hired you?
Objection, that's not germane to this. She's trying to introduce a conversation with him through a
Well,
question.
you're the one who asked me what, did
Do
you
you-
not know
do
anything
you
until
have-
last Friday?
Mr.
So I'm just
Bethea,
trying to clear
do
that up.
do you have a question that's in response to the cross-examination from Mr. Watson?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, at this time, we'd like to start the rebuttals to the testimony that's been given so far. Ms. Bethea, you have 5 minutes.
All right, I'm going to let
start
Mr.
your-
Compton handle that rebuttal.
How can he do it if he's not a legal representative?
Okay, fine, I'll do it, that's fine.
Well,
I'm just asking.
Well, I don't think it has to be a legal representative. If she would like to,
I'm just simply asking.
I understand. If you would like.
I'd like
Mr.
him to handle the
Compton
rebuttal.
to, okay.
Yes, sir.
Then go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. Basically, what I just heard from Mr. Watson, he made our case for us. The law clearly states at the time of the election, he has to live in District 1. My evidence proves that he lives in District 5 at the time of the election. The domicile, which he put a board up there, domicile, that law says he can only own and live in one domicile. He can't live in both. Of course I know he's going to object about opinion, but all the evidence he put in there, I can put down that I live at 403 Lewis Street, but I don't live there. Nobody goes out and checks these people's addresses and stuff like that. They're depending on them telling the truth at the time they fill out all this paperwork. No investigator goes out and checks, about his license check or anything else. But that said, the evidence proves that, no matter what he puts on paperwork, it's what his actions is. Not what's on the paperwork, where he's laying his head, his domicile. His domicile right now is 1927 Russell Court, which is in District 5, not District 1. If he wanted to run for District 5, he had all the rights to go to District 5 and run for that area, not District 1. he talks about, again, he talks about all the paperwork. The law says he must be a resident of that district at the time of the election. It doesn't matter when he filed, doesn't matter any about that. It matters what he did at the time of the election, and before the election, and during the election, and after election. He lives at 1927 Russell Court. It's a plain, simple fact, and that's, he made our case for us. Now, do I think it's fraud what he's done? Absolutely. I believe it is fraud, because he filled out all this paperwork claiming that he lives at that.
Could you keep it to the
Okay.
discussion of the election challenge, please?
I'm sorry?
To be the election challenge, not any other challenge.
Oh, I understand, but he's the one that brought it up about filling out all this paperwork. I'm bringing it up that he lied on that paperwork. because he
Objection to
does
the
not
color
live
of that comment.
Yeah, we need to kind of keep this.
Okay. I'm through, sir. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for your time.
Mr. Campbell, Mr. 5-minute rebuttal.
I'm gonna do it another 5 minutes, Mr. Chairman. I
Okay.
have about worn you all out, and I apologize. I want to go through the statute. The statute is as clear a pathway as anything that we can look for today. It says specifically what domicile is, and I just want to take the first three things and just rely upon those if I may. First, reading from the statute, a person's residence is his domicile. Domicile means a person's fixed home where he has an intention of returning when he is absent. A person only has one domicile. All of the testimony today presented by Mr. Campbell squarely says that, and not a single thing. Gentleman says, I'm just there till I get my house fixed. He says his wife came there. So when his wife came there, was her residence changed? If you take Ms. Bethea's theory, bam! First night she spent the night there, her residence was changed to Mr. Campbell's house. It simply is not. Look at the second, it's B, for voting purposes. The person has changed his representation if he has abandoned his prior home, has established a new home, has a present intention to make that place his home permanent. There is absolutely no evidence of that whatsoever. Voter registration card, driver's license, mortgage, every document which is listed under this statute says he lives where he has said he is living. C, for the purpose of voting, a spouse may establish a separate residence. I go back to my example. How many people in Dillon County have a vacation rental place like a trailer at Santee? Some hovel down at the beach, someplace to go fishing. I mean, when you go down there for 2 weeks in the summer, are you a resident of Horry County? No way in this world. No, sir, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I respectfully submit the complainant has not met her burden of proof, one, by the recency of the investigation, two, by the statutes which govern this, three, by the examination of the local Democratic Party, three, by the examination of the South Carolina Democratic Party, and four, by your review of his candidacy when you placed him on the ballot. With all due respect, it's not just barely a showing of residency as we have alleged. It's overwhelming. Thank you very much.
Okay, at this time, does any members of the commission have any questions of any party?
I actually do, with Ms. Bethea. This party keeps talking about the statute 7125, and you keep talking about at the time of the election. Can you point me in the direction of what statute says that?
That came straight from the South Carolina State Election Commission, that a candidate's qualifications for all offices are determined at the time of the election and not at the time of filing or nomination. That comes from the South Carolina State Election Commission.
But there's no citing of state law?
Just what came from the South Carolina State Election Commission.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any further questions? Okay, at this time, the chair will entertain one of the three motions to enter into executive session to obtain legal advice from counsel. The other motion would be to uphold the petition of Ms. Bethea and rule that Mr. James Campbell is not a qualified elector in Dillon County Council 1, or a motion to deny the petition of Ms. Bethea and rule that Mr. James Campbell is a qualified elector in Dillon County Council 1. I'll entertain one of those three motions.
Make that motion to go into executive session for the purpose of legal advice.
Second motion.
Okay, all right, there's a second. All those in favor? say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Okay, well, at this point, we're going to go into executive session, so we ask that we clear the room except for our attorney. Thank you very much.
What was she doing? On the record.
Okay. Do I have a motion that we return from executive session?
Make a motion.
Is there a second? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. At this time, well, I'd just like to announce that no voting or deliberation was held in executive session. We just received advice from the commission's attorney. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to either uphold the petition of Ms. Bethea or deny the petition of Ms. Bethea. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we uphold the petition of Ms. Bethea.
Okay. Is there a second? Okay. All those in favor of holding the petition of Ms. Bethea, well, excuse me, is there any discussion of this? Okay. Everybody's clear on what we're voting on? Okay. So, all in favor of upholding the petition of Ms. Bethea and rule that Mr. Campbell is not a qualified elector in Dillon County District 1, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Nay.
Nay.
The nays have it. So the petition therefore is denied. And I'll call this meeting to close.
Can I have a roll call, please? I just like to know.
I've closed it.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
All right.